Okay, well, I'm ready to start machining along the top here to give me my 20-degree angle, and you saw that I'd given up trying to use a small piece of wire to hold this in place. I just left the piece of material long so that I've got something to hold on the end here to manoeuvre that to get it in the right position. So let's get on with this part of it. I'll just show you a bit of this because it will take a while for me to machine this down, and there's no point in you watching all of it. So pull the tool down to touch off. That's shooting very hot bits of metal everywhere, so I'm going to use my, I don't know if you can see that in the picture, my little shield here to try and deflect the hot chips. Okay, as I said, I won't keep you hanging around while I machine this right down. I'll carry on with this and bring you back towards the end of it. This will be the final pass now. Okay, so that's its final cut. And providing nothing's moved in here, that I should have a nice 20-degree angle on this piece. Be carefully take that out. Remove my bit of aluminium. So there we are. I've actually brought this to a very, very sharp point here, but the end of that will be filed back to make this end blunt. It doesn't need to end at such a sharp angle. So I'll deburr all of this, and then we'll go to the bench and have a look at it. Well, the wedge part seems to have turned out okay. So we've got that surface nicely machined, and I've deburred all the edges, and where I'd ended up with a sharp point here, I've just filed the edge of that, obviously to make it safe. So that will fit into the slot here, and that can be raised up sort of level with it, but you'll see there is a little gap here which was on the other one I made anyway. That doesn't really make any difference at all. So that will be its, if you like, its closed position. So what I need to do now is mark it up to machine this part off. I'll probably, obviously there's a lot here, I'll cut part of that off so that when that's in its closed position, this part will end up flush with the end here, and that's where the end cap will go onto the end there once that's machined away. So that will be the next job to do. I probably won't bother showing that because it is all quite straightforward. I'll just mark this up, put obviously some bluing on it, mark it up, and then I'll saw most of it off, and then I'll just machine that to get it square to the end of the block. So we're getting near to the end now. What I'll probably bring you back for is marking out the this block here that goes on the end, because there's a bit more to that. There's some marking out and then some drilling and sort of tapping a hole. So not very much more to do now. Obviously once the holes here are obviously clearance holes for the screws I'm going to use, and once I've drilled those, obviously these have got to be positioned so that they come in the very centre of the end here, because I want to use with the largest screws that are safe to use in it, and I'm going to use countersunk screws, so I've got to make sure that the countersunk section doesn't sort of overlap the edges of this. So once the clearance holes are in here, that can be positioned over here like that, and then I can transfer the holes down onto this part and then drill and tap those holes out. So I'll probably bring you back for that part. Probably no point in showing you machining the end part of that. It's not going to be that interesting, but you'll see that. I'll show you that once that part's actually done. But I have everything laid out ready now to drill the 4 clearance holes around the outside here. This will hold the cap on the end of the parts, and I've got another position marked here for a 5mm thread, which will take the screw that pushes the wedge along the part. So that will push the wedge up here. I've laid out all the things I need here: the 3mm clearance drill, my little pointer so I can line up the little punch marks, and I've got my tapping drill, a 4.25 drill and a 5mm tap ready. Because these holes are going to be sort of very close to the edge here, I'm using my aluminium sacrificial parallels in here, so it doesn't really matter if they get damaged, and I'll use one of my springs here to hold the parallels apart, so that they stay in position while I'm setting everything up. There we go. So we can drop that in here. And tighten that in. Just load in tight. Okay. Right, so put the pointer in the chuck. And I can then line that up with the first hole. Make sure I've got plenty of light on the subject. Looks lined up okay, so now we can replace the pointer with a starter drill. Now a 3mm drill. So that's it, that's the first one. 3 more to go. I'll do the rest of those off camera. That's the 4 clearance holes drilled, they'd all drilled 3mm, and now I've got to drill here with a 4.25 tapping drill, so I can tap that 5mm here. I've already lined up the hole just to save a bit of time, so that's lined up ready. And we'll put in our spotting drill. Switched over to using one of these because I've had so many instances using these drills that the ends, as you see there, the ends snap off. They're not perhaps the best of drills available, but these seem to be a lot more durable, so I think in future it's probably better to use these for spotting the drill position. They seem to work a lot better. So this is going to be no exception to that. I'll just start the tap off in the chuck here, and then I can use a tap wrench to complete. Put some paste on that. Tighten that up a bit. Hopefully that's okay. So It looks as though we've got a thread in there. Let's just hope that's all fine. So what I've got to do now is countersink these 4 outer holes. Now I'm set up to countersink the holes. I've done one just to test everything out. These are the little screws I'm going to be using, so that will fit reasonably well in there. It's not going to be, I guess, absolutely flush with the surface, because if I go in too far, the countersink's going to, it will break into the edges here. But as long as it lays sort of reasonably flat, it's going to look quite neat. So let's have a go now. There's plenty of cutting oil for this. I didn't seem to get any chatter cutting the hole, because the other trick would have been to put a thin piece of cloth over the hole while I'm drilling, but it does seem to have countersunk sort of, you know, reasonably smoothly, so hopefully that would be okay. I think that'll be okay. It's very close to the edge there, but I think that'll be okay. So I'll just go on and I'll complete the other 2 holes now off camera. What I need to do now is to transfer these holes into the block itself. Whether this is a good method or not, I don't know, but what I've done is I've mounted, you can see the block into my toolmaker's vise and lined the block up above it, and I've put a piece of that aluminium wire in here as well, to hold the 2 parts together. Although both these parts came off the same piece of stock, obviously what I don't want is for the cap part to move while I'm transferring the holes over, so hopefully that will hold it all in place. I set this all up on the bench, and what I also did was to use a bit of brass drift to tap these down into position, so I've got them hopefully in nice and tight, and then I've tightened the vise really strongly as I can to hold all these in position. So what I'm going to do is use the milling machine and a drill. I'm not going to drill the holes right the way in. I'll just use the drill to sort of drill part way in to get the positions correct. The ideal thing would have been to use a transfer punch to do this, but the transfer punch set I've got is imperial sizes, and I don't have one that fits into these 3mm holes snugly enough that I feel confident that it's going to put the drill hole in the right position. So this is the sort of alternative. I guess I could have made the transfer punch up, but when I made the small one of these, I used this same method to transfer the holes here, and it seemed to work okay. I didn't fit this in with a piece of aluminium bar into the vise when I did it, so I think this part here I had to stop and keep resetting because this the cap part did sort of keep moving slightly, so I had to keep adjusting it to get it to drill right. But I think by making this little tiny one, which I can still use and I'm going to use it, was a good test before I made the one in steel. So make sure everything I've cleaned up the bed of the mill nicely. I'll just make sure there's no chips on here or anything underneath the vise, and we'll do that. I'll just do one hole just to show you, and then I'll do the rest of these off camera. I think I need to move that along a bit more so I've got a good position for each of the holes when I do this. Well, I hope that's going to be okay. Notice that the block moved then, so I'm hoping it's not move the position of that block out, but we'll soon see when I get that undone. I'll have a examination of that on the bench and make sure that the holes are all in the right position. You see I've got those little marks in place now, just to give that a clean up so I can just check that. From a visual examination it looks as though I'm okay. I think as I drilled into that last one it probably just caught that plate. But it does look okay. So what I can do now is reset the main block back up into this vise again, and then complete the drilling on those holes, ready for tapping 3mm. Slight change of plan on the size of screws I'm going to use to hold the end cap onto the wedge block. I was going to use 3mm countersunk screws because that's what I had, but I was rather worried about the very small Allen keys that it would take to tighten them up. So what I've done is I've gone for the next size up 4mm cap head screws instead. So I've just drilled the holes out to 4mm clearance, and carried on and drilled these holes the appropriate size. I think it's 3.3 millimeters for tapping. So I've got a 4mm tap in my tapping jig here. I've tapped one of the holes out already just to make sure everything's working fine, and I'm using the same tapping jig that I've used a number of times in the past. So I'm just going to put some cutting paste on the tap. I like using this very sort of gloopy cutting paste because with oil it just sort of runs off, but with this sort of tapping compound it sort of stays in place while you're getting everything set up. So just line that up very carefully with the hole, and I generally use this jig just basically to start the tap off, and then I can remove it and use a conventional tap wrench to complete the tapping process. So just get that started. Often the sign that it's okay is that the tap spins a bit. There we go, that started to spin round, so if I just release that, move that up out the way and move that across. Just make sure I've got that where you can see it, and use a tap wrench. Just a bit more, too much. So, and we can just complete the tapping process. I'm careful to keep backing the tap off. If it turns out that the little screws I'm using are a bit too long, I'll just cut them down, because they don't have, although I've drilled the holes quite deeply, because I'm obviously tapping into a blind hole, the screws haven't got to go all the way down here, because they'll only need a few threads to get enough thread engagement anyway. That's probably okay. Just remove that. So get that out by hand. No, I can't. Okay, so I'll carry on and tap the rest of these holes, and then I'll bring you back at that stage. It's really going to be the final assembly of the part. Well, all bar the shouting, it's finished. The block's all done, and the end cap, the little screws, I did shorten these because they were really far too long, didn't need to be as long as they were, but that basically is what I had. So it's really just a matter of attaching this. Screwing those into place. I'm sort of much happier in having slightly larger cap heads with a bigger Allen key to attach them. a lot safer. It's got, you know, reasonable fit there. Just lock those in. Obviously the whole thing needs just a basic clean up now. Just to get rid of all the marking glue that I put on it. So the wedge will slide in, and I've got a 5mm cap head screw that I've put into a little knob on the end. It already had quite a lot of little knurled knobs like this that I'd made when I was testing out my index knurling tool, so I did keep them all, and they've come in handy. There was one here I used on the small one as well, so that will screw into the back. This could do with being, I guess, a little bit longer, but it is actually the longest screw I had. The longest screws I've got aren't threaded all the way down, so the thread is, even on longer ones, it's the same length. So I'll either make a longer screw or try and find one that's threaded all the way down to give me a longer thread to it, so it would push the wedge a bit further up. But the idea is that will screw into here, and the same as on the small one. As that goes in, it will lift the wedge up. When I've seen these being used, it seems that mostly people have used these actually as like a machinist jack to go on the under a piece of material to hold it in position while you're doing something on the milling machine. So although it's an adjustable wedge parallel, it seems to have other uses, of whether it's just called that because it's bringing the wedge parallel to the base. I don't know. This it's quite a loose fit in there, but it will slide back under gravity, but that doesn't really matter. I don't know yet whether I'm going to put a pin in the side of it with a slot in the side of the wedge or not. I don't know whether I will do that, or just, you know, just use it and see how I get on with it, basically. But there we are. It's in quite a nice outcome, really. It's quite a fun project. There's quite a lot of different processes to go through to make this, so it's quite a fun build. So I've got that one and the little aluminium prototype I made. These could be used for similar uses to that, either as a parallel or even as a jacking system. I was thinking that this small one might be something I could use on my fixture plate as well. But talking of adjustable parallels, there are obviously sets of adjustable parallels available. They can also be bought individually if you only need particular sizes, and quite some years ago I actually made one. I didn't know at the time how these were constructed when I made this. I didn't realise that the if you like, the two halves of this were a sort of a sort of tongue and groove inside here. I didn't realise how they were made, so the one I made, I put a cut a groove in both pieces, and then put a flat piece of material between the two, and then that locks the two bits together with little Allen screws. But of course the Allen screws do damage the side of this here. But I have actually used this quite a few times in the past in the workshop. It gives you, quite a good range, but actually the adjustable parallels are sort of quite expensive things to buy, and they're quite nice things to have in the milling machine vise, because you can achieve with the small ones the odd sizes in between the the heights of the various parallels that you use in the vise. Sometimes when you're setting up in the milling machine vise, you're sort of in between two different ideal sizes, really. I think this probably for most things is a bit too big. Really would probably be better if I had some that were, you know, about half or so of the size of this. But certainly the sets you buy, I don't think I'd ever buy a set, because the sets have huge ones in it, much bigger ones, which I would never use. They're obviously ideal for very large sizes of vise on very big milling machines, but it would just be the smaller ones. But this has been quite a useful thing to have. It was the very early project I made a few years back. But there we are. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little project. I'm sorry that the project was so long. This is a very long video in the end, but rather than sort of making it in two parts, I thought I would just leave it all together. But obviously there are parts of it that, if you are interested at all, you can obviously skip through bits and pieces of it, which I know people do anyway. But there we are. Quite pleased with the outcome of that. And that will look quite nice when it's all cleaned up, and possibly even cold blued as well. Might be an idea. Well, thank you for joining me again. Again, I hope you enjoyed the build and sticking with me through all the machining and drilling and tapping exercises. Thanks again also for all the subscribers to the channel and all the lovely comments I've been receiving recently. Some sort of quite interesting comments and lots of bits of useful advice as well. I hope to have lots more projects for you in the future. I'm trying now to do projects where I can actually show making things, where in the distant past of my channel I wasn't really confident enough to do that, but making things on camera I guess is always very difficult, because any mistakes you make are plainly seen. But there we are. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye for now.